We will now start a new topic, which is a very important topic.
We also had to add
because
about women, so it's very fitting.
Good.
Yeah.
Because this is a a topic that you will definitely come across. It's one which is politically sensitive as well, for various reasons, and we, as ever, will need to look at it as one should, which is through the lens of halacha, but also we'll do hashkafa as well. Now, this is not quite my source sheet, and not everything on this I fully agree with, but we'll examine it critically. We've got to start somewhere and start properly. So let's give it a very quick introduction. Let's give the topic a quick introduction, and then we will start looking into some of the aspects of it. The way the Torah relates to women and vis-a-vis their chiyuvim, their obligations, their capacity to act in certain ways, their agency, if you want to use the correct sort of the philosophical term, their agency. So there is no question, one thing that comes across very, very clearly, and it is this more than anything else that sticks in the liberal throat and creates an irritation and an itch today, is that, newsflash, the Torah sees men and women as different.
Wow.
They are not the same thing. They are not the same thing, and therefore, as the saying goes, different strokes for different folks.
Right.
Different obligations, different capacities, different roles. Different roles, and some things which are available to men potentially might not be available to women. And this is where we're really going to come up against this is really at the root of it. It is very often, if not always, it is about this basic understanding, because Western liberal society teaches comes at this from a whole different perspective, which is that of rights. I have a right. I have a right to have the same job opportunities as you have. Equality of pay, whether it's outcome, whether it's equalities of outcome or equalities of opportunity, we can argue that point. But the point is, in any way to treat a woman differently to a man is a problem. Right?
The Jews would then say, leave us the right to have our obligations.
Yeah, but that's correct. But the thing is that we're talking about the pressure from within. The pressure from within. And sometimes it is, my assertion here is that sometimes it's merely misguided, and sometimes it is more than that. And one needs to know where it's coming from. But fundamentally, there's no question. There's no way to sugarcoat this. And this is sometimes, I feel sometimes it's dishonest, the way some people sometimes respond, and by bending over backwards to suggest that the Torah, you think you're liberal, you're egalitarian, the Torah is the more treats women even better than the... Now, some aspects of it may be true, such as the ksuba, to give a woman protection, financial protection, etc. Here's another fascinating one. Rape within marriage. In most democracies, it only became a thing. It only became illegal about 20 years ago. Do you know that? Because the assumption is, if you're married, it can't be rape. That is your right, almost. Your wife is there available for you. In Torah thought, we flip it right round. You have a mitzvah of oina. You have an obligation of oina. You don't have rights. Your mitzvah is to make sure that your wife has pleasure in that area. To be mekayem your mitzvah of oina. It's a mitzvah. It's not the other way around. Now, it is true that if a woman, chas v'shalom, let's say, would routinely and on principle withhold marital intimacy for whatever reason, that could very well be grounds for divorce, because the Torah does not expect you. This is an aspect of marriage, and therefore to have a fully rich marriage without that being even available to you, if she withholds it, Beseda, that could be grounds for divorce. There's no question about that. But the basic concept that you have a right to marital intimacy because you're married, and therefore, like I say, until really relatively recently, do the research, you'll find out that really only 20, maybe 30 years ago, though legally it wasn't recognized, you couldn't bring a charge, a wife couldn't bring a charge, my husband raped me. Duh, he's your husband. Whereas we have had the Gemara in the Dorim Daf Chav, B'nei Anusim, it is absolutely, it always was strictly forbidden if a woman does not want, if a wife doesn't want. In fact, the main aspect of the mitzvah, it's not to turn this into a chosen class, but without being too indelicate. But the mitzvah is to make sure that she has pleasure, and therefore, as very famously the Stipler in his famous machlekes with the Geras, and we shouldn't go into it, but the physical foreplay and the endearing element of it is the mitzvah and doiraisa. That is kedusha. So, swings and roundabouts. There are advantages and disadvantages, if that's the right word, the way to look at it. But it is fundamentally dishonest to try and take, and this, I want to talk this out very quickly. I think I've mentioned this before, I want to say it again. If I was teaching this as a classroom thing, I'd probably put it on the board. And on one side of the board, I would put polemics. I'll explain. A polemic. The other side, I would put apologetic or apologetics, and in the middle, I would write context. I'll explain to you what I mean. A polemical argument is a politically loaded argument where you not only have you made your mind up, you are so utterly convinced of the correctness of your perspective that you are, it's a bit like the evolutionists, or sometimes perhaps even on the other side of the debate, when more often than not, when you will see Richard Dawkins or these chevra putting forward their views on evolution, they don't come across as this cold, dispassionate, clinical, scientific argument. They are, as I've mentioned before, the Financial Times, I think it was, called Dawkins, the high priest of atheism. The delicious irony there, that they have a mission. We are on a mission. We're thumping the table and we are proving our point. That's called a polemical argument, right? It's not just you're invested emotionally a lot into it and you're not really ready to listen to anything else. That's the point. The other side of the argument. So one way you can do this is by instead of engaging in some sort of debate, you could turn around to people who are feminists and say, you're terrible people. You are. You could come at this in a very patronizing, condescending, morally superior. You must be terrible people because you want different things for women than the Torah prescribes. That would be A, it doesn't work. B, it's not actually the right approach. That's polemical, right? And that's never correct, whether it's coming, whichever side of the fence it's coming from. The other side of the argument is apologetics. Well, it's not actually the correct way of understanding, but this is the way I think it's useful for us. Apologetic is to say, oh, really, I accept fundamentally that the liberal secular, I'm ever so slightly embarrassed by the fact that a man can divorce his wife, at least min haTorah, without asking her permission. And really, we don't give women aliyos, and therefore I perceive the modern, the 21st century way of looking at it as kind of the right way to go. The Torah is somewhat backwards, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and shoehorn the Torah into modern Western values and say, you think you're liberal? I'll show you how liberal the Torah is. You think you're progressive? Look at the protection we gave to women. Look at and that is also fundamentally dishonest. Because for two reasons. First of all, what you've done fundamentally is you actually accepted the supremacy and the modern liberal perspective is fundamentally correct. I'm ever so slightly embarrassed about the Torah's archaic, old-fashioned way of looking at women and things like that, and I'm slightly embarrassed. So I will I'll bend over backwards and make all sorts of legal contortions to say, really, when the Torah says that we can't have women as Adim, it doesn't mean we don't trust them. It means something else. And that's not honest either. What we need to do is what I call the middle road, which is called context, which is the Torah deserves, this is our perspective as Orthodox Jews, the Torah deserves to be perceived within its own context, not viewed through the prism of 21st century liberal values, not even your values. It has to be seen within its own values. It represents Hashem's perspective on the world. This is the creator of the universe giving us the instruction booklet for how we should live and learn and view and perceive things. And therefore, what ought to happen is us to have the humility to sit down and learn the Torah on its terms, not on our terms. Give it its correct context. Having said that, as a very short introduction, therefore, rather than, we're not going to thump the table and say all feminists are terrible human beings, nor are we going to say the Torah is oh so liberal and oh so progressive. We're going to hopefully do the right thing, which is we're going to learn. We're going to learn Torah, and Torah reveals to us itself the range of ideas which are, from an Orthodox perspective, which are acceptable, and they're not monolithic. There are different opinions. We will see. The opinion of Rav Soloveitchik, for example, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe on certain aspects of teaching women Torah is at odds with that accepted in the broadly in the yeshivish community. And that's okay. That's fine. Because they are Gedolim, in their own right, and we have machlekas. We're comfortable with that. We don't have a problem with that. And here is where it is going to get quite difficult for us to be clear in our own minds. Is we want to. Sometimes it's called big tent Judaism. You may have come across this phrase. Well, you should be familiar with it, at least in English. Big tent Judaism. Like, we want to embrace and bring as many people as we can within the tent. Well, where does the tent stop? And who decides? Who says? So when we come to issues such as women rabbis, right, there is a person in Berlin who practices as a woman rabbi. And that, from a classic Orthodox perspective, is unacceptable. Now, that doesn't mean she is a bad person. I have no doubt know her a little. And I'm not talking about liberal. We're not talking about liberal and reform and progressive and reconstructionist, because we know they are outside the tent, because one could argue there is no tent. For them, it's pretty much anything goes. But I'm talking, the real danger, if that is the right word, and I don't mean it, I mean danger, in the sense of being able to define boundaries. We have this thing today called open orthodoxy, where we will talk about it, and I will make the argument that it is not orthodox, as it is classically understood, right? Where do we draw the line? And that, for yourselves, you need to know. What would be considered within the tent, and where does the tent end? It has to end somewhere, okay? And this is the battleground. And in some areas, and we have something in between. Yoatzot, you may have come across the concept. Yes? So again, a yoatzot, which means the female halachic advisors, poskot, rabbah. There's all sorts of fascinating, there's an alphabet soup of, and we need to know what that means. And what does it mean to us? And is it acceptable to mainstream orthodoxy or not? And where do we draw the line? Mm-hmm. And it's not always so easy to realize. And again, there will be more than one opinion. I'm here to share with you what I feel is a balanced perspective. But as ever, we look at it, we come at it from the sources. And again, this is a topic that we could do pretty much forever, but we're going to try and be disciplined. We'll learn the Makoros. We will also look at the statements of the major Orthodox organizations, ranging from Aguda, RCA, etc., even the modern Orthodox ones, and how they view all of these various challenges. Because at some point you'll need to be clear in your own mind. Why can't I give a woman an aliyah? Why is that so bad? Why can't she be? We have female educators. Well, why can't she? If she's taken a course in Hilchos Nida, can she also paskin? So women feel more comfortable with her, and we will discuss the different perspectives.
Could she do a siyum?
That's another great question. Could she do a siyum? I have a lot to say on that. And that will depend on, but as ever, we have to go back to the Makoros. So, not all of the Makoros here do I fully agree with every aspect of it, and I'll give you but it's something that I found which I think gives us a really good start. So we're going to start off with Talmud Torah. We'll start off with Talmud Torah, okay? Because often the battleground is there. And let's put it into its context. Our great-grandmothers, great-great-grandmothers, who are undoubtedly from, I have no doubt, all of them, were probably, the statistics would say, many of them probably may not have known how to read, very possibly, and almost certainly none of them were Torah scholars. That's probably historically accurate. Today, we live in a world where our wives, daughters, are taking degrees, are learning, are having access to secular knowledge that our great-grandmothers would never have had. Right? So my daughter has a science degree. She did while she was in Gates at Sem. The wives are doing degrees and therefore they have access to being, even as an Orthodox Jewess, being a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is. And then we come to this area called Talmud Torah, and this is one of the first areas of the battleground. I want to learn Gemara. And again, I don't want to start here now. Of course, a woman can learn Gemara. There's no suggestion. The question would be more about the propriety of teaching them Gemara. And on that, there's a range of opinions.
Meaning for men to teach them.
Right? Correct. Mm-hmm. Well, not so simple.
No.
We'll have to see. That we'll have to see. And again, as I've said, there is a range of opinions. But this is where it all of a sudden it seems to be to become a bit complicated and not so easy for me to understand. Why on earth would I not be able to? Should I not have access to the same sugya that my husband is learning in Kailul? Oh no, of course she has access. She can go online and do it, or she can. But it's the teaching element. So we'll come to all of that. Okay, the Torah does seem to say different things. They are not in line with modern, current, liberal thinking. And how do we first of all, how do we understand? We need to be armed with the facts, and then we can go to the hashkaf. So let's start. We're going to look at 4 or 5 different aspects or perspectives on Torah learning itself, and then apply them to women. So the first thing is Torah as the focus and purpose of existence. Just before we do this, let me just tell you maybe one thing which you might consider controversial, but I think pretty much most people would agree with it, and that is as follows. A vote from Rabbi Lopian. Shalom Rav la'oi havei seirasecha ve'ein lamoi michshel. We all know the pasuk, right? Shalom Rav, there is much shalom and peace, la'oi havei seirasecha, to those who love your Torah, ve'ein lamoi michshel, but they have no stolpersteiner. They have no michshel. There's nothing they can stumble on. He explains this pasuk to mean that it's a reference to women. He says, Shalom Rav, la'oi havei seirasecha. Women are oi havei seirasecha. But ve'ein lamei michshel, they have no downside. There's no bittul Torah for a woman. There's no concept. They can't lose. It's only win. If a woman learns Torah, she gets schar, probably as an eina mitzuva va'isa. We'll discuss this. We'll see this. She can get the schar. And in fact, a woman's primary connection to Talmud Torah, I'll make a statement, is, the Gemara asks as follows. The Gemara says, the Gemara Brachas Daf Yud Zayin, Hani Noshi, our wives, b'may zochi, with what are they zoicha? How are they zoicha to Olam Haba? What a bizarre question. I've taught you this already. How many mitzvahs is a woman mechuyev in? You should know the answer straight away.
There were
all besides
599 is the answer.
right.
599 out of 613. So then what's the Gemara's question? Our wives, b'meh zochi, how are they zoicha? What do you mean, how are they zoicha? They have 599 mitzvahs to do. What do you mean, how are they zoicha? The Gemara answers, because in the schar that they accompany their children to the cheder, they wait for their husbands to come home from Koilel. This is the Gemara. Gemara Brachas Daf Yud Zayin. That's how they're zoicha to Olam Haba. What on earth does that mean? Do they not get schar for all of their own mitzvahs? 599 mitzvahs they have to keep. The answer is, Olam haba specifically is earned through, of course they get schar for all of their mitzvahs, no question about it. But Olam haba, the connection between Olam haba and Talmud Torah is very deep. And the question is, what is their connection to Talmud Torah, given that they are not obligated in Talmud Torah, certainly not to the same level as a man? And the answer is, their connection to Talmud Torah is by demonstrating their love for Torah. That's Shalom Rav L'oi Havei Seirasecha. But there's no, you hear that? But there's no downside, says Rebelli, because there's no Bittul Torah. When you come to Shamayim, when I come to Shamayim, well, I should talk about you. So when I come to Shamayim, I will have to give din v'cheshbon for Bittul Torah. And I'm sorry to ruin your morning, day, life, whatever, but there's a Yerushalmi. You know, everybody's famous, everybody likes quoting Mishnah. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam. We say it every morning, right? Says the Yerushalmi on that. That means Bittul Torah keneged kulam. It's Yerushalmi. Pay over there. It's true that Talmud Torah is the greatest mitzvah, and therefore the schar is keneged kulam, but Bittul Torah is also the worst avera, in some sense. Keneged kulam. So when you or I, when we get to Shamayim, we're going to have to give din v'cheshbon. The Rabban Shem will say, Roberts, last night, it's true you only came home late. It's true you've been hopefully working and learning and teaching or whatever through the day. But that 10 minutes that you spent, okay, everybody's on their own madrega, whatever. And of course, one needs to eat, sleep, relax, do the homework with the kids, spend time with the wife, if you have to go to the gym, that's all, anything that is reasonable. Once that is done, there's no such thing as, why didn't you learn a mission the last 10 minutes before you went to sleep? There's Bittul Torah. There is no such thing as a Jew with there's nothing to do. Ein kazeh davar, you know that, right?
We're not hanging around.
No such thing, correct. But for a woman, there's no Bittul Torah. You choose to learn, great. You don't, ein lo memichsha. That means a woman will come to Shamayim and Hashem cannot say to her, why did you not learn Torah? With a man we can. It's very, very different. Let's put that down as the very basic. Okay. Torah is the purpose of existence. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ves haaretz. Says Rashi very famously, this cannot be a statement of chronology, because you can't say Shamayim came first, because actually Shamayim itself is a composite. It's made up of Eish and Mayim. So this is obviously not a statement of chronology, rather it is a mission statement. Number 2. The world was created bereshis for the purpose of those two entities that will combine. And this is the cosmic triangle. Kudshabrichu Yisrael va'iraisa. For why was the world created? So that there would be Jews who would get close to Hashem primarily as they do through learning Torah. Finished. That's Tachlis Habriya. Rashi understands the purpose of creation narrative, not to explain how the world was made, but why. Our physical existence has meaning and purpose, primarily Torah in its widest sense. You all know this, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Gimel. Rashi brings it here. What's Yom Hashishi? It doesn't say Yom Hashlishi, Yom Haravi, Hachamishi. It says Rashi, Hoisef, source 4, Hoisef, Hey, Bashishi, Bigma, Baisa, Bereshis, Lema, Shehisna, Imoyim, Al Menoshi, Kablu, Aleim, Yisrael, Chamishal, Chum, Shetorah. Davar Acher, Yom Hashishi, Kulam Tluim, Va'onim, Ad Yom Hashishi, Hu Shishi, Besivan, Hamuchan, Lematan Torah. Whichever way you learn, creation was contingent. It was abhängig. I got it. Okay, the purpose of all physical creation was contingent upon the giving and acceptance of the Torah of the 6th of Sivan, because otherwise there was a Tanai. Hisna HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Bereshis, as you know. If we would have turned around on the 6th of Sivan and said no, the Torah would have immediately gone L'Tohu V'Avoyu, and as you all know, Reb Chaim Volozhin says very famously that from that moment on, and that's why Imloi Berisi Yoimam V'Layla because when we are sleeping in our beds, the Jungelite in Melbourne, Kolal, are literally keeping the world going. There has to be somebody somewhere at any given second of the day that is Oisik in Talmud Torah for the world to physically continue. If Chas v'Shalom, says Reb Chaim Volozhin in the name of the Zohar HaKodesh, if there was a single second since the moment of Matan Torah that there would not be a Jew, a male Jew somewhere, learning Torah, the world would just simply stop existing. It is the very fuel and the engine which keeps the world going. Okay, lo yomush sefer HaTorah zeh mipicha. Pasuk in Yeshua. V'algiso b'yoymom v'layla. Yeshua, Hashem instructs Yeshua that he must be involved in Torah yomim v'layla, day and night. Koyamar Hashem 6 in Lebrisi yom v'layla chukas shemayim v'aretz lisamti. I explained that already. The Omer Abelaz Gdei Torah she'il malei Torah l'niskaimu shemayim v'aretz. Yeah, and that's the Gemara Nedarim. Says that Zoyar source 8 v'iraisa kula chad shma kadisha ihi dekudsha brichu. The Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. By the way, just very quickly, and it's actually really important for a number of different reasons. Why do we make a Birchas HaTorah? Where do we learn it from? Gemara Brachos, says the Gemara. Do you know how we learn the Birchas HaTorah? Because it says Kishem Hashem Ekra Havu Geidel Elekeinu, Pasuk in Hazinu. Kishem Hashem Ekra. When I read the name of God, I should give greatness to our God. Kishem Hashem. In other words, here is fascinatingly, this is the Torah being self-referential. You hear that? It's the Torah referring to itself. As what? Shem Hashem. Ki Shem Hashem Ekra. When I read the Shem Hashem, Havu Gaidel, you have to say, wow. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'naseh lanu es Torasei. And it is a mitzvah min haTorah to say Birchas HaTorah, because you have to appreciate the privilege of learning Torah, and that it is fundamentally one big cosmic formula of Hashem's names. That's what it is. It's the mind of Hashem. So it's the equivalence of Torah in Hashem's mind. At a mystical level, all of the Torah is made from the names of Hashem, and Hashem created man together with the Torah, meaning he used the Torah to create. Over the page, rushing through this, but we're just bigging up Torah, basically, yes? The different aspects and perspectives of it. Okay? Here again, Gimel Dargin Inun, the Miskashrim Dobadok, Kudshabrichu Eraisa v'Yisrael. 3 levels in which people, they're connected to each other. Kudshabrichu Yisrael v'Eraisa. Fine. So Torah in its wider sense is paramount and central in Jewish thought. To state simply, and as we shall see incorrectly, that women are exempt from learning Torah, risks disconnecting women from this most fundamental Jewish value. I'm not sure that he's actually totally correct. Let's see. Torah Shebal Peh as the central covenant with God. Now here we have, I don't know why he actually brought this. I could have brought another, the Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara says in Gittin Taf Samach, Ki al pi hadvarim ha'ele koras Hashem bris v'es Yisrael, al pi hadvarim ha'ele, loi koras HaKadosh Baruch Hu brisim Yisrael ela al Torah Shebal Peh. The bris was not on Torah Shebechsav. The bris was on Torah Shebal Peh. Okay? And here it says the Yerushalmi. Again, the same thing. Fine. Now, the mitzvah of learning Torah, by the way, I don't know whether you knew this, and this is not often stressed enough, but it is also when one learns Torah, it is also a way of actually ahavas Hashem. How do you demonstrate that you like somebody? That you really like somebody, you love somebody?
A gift.
Sorry?
A gift.
No. Sorry. Yes. No. Deeper than that. Why am I rejecting that? Because a gift involves an investment of some money, and it is, you give it. I'm not saying you shouldn't, and it has its place, but go deeper than that. Think of relationships.
Care.
Sorry?
Taking care.
Taking care. Keep going.
Without expecting.
Okay,
anything
good.
back.
Keep going. I'm making you work.
I mean, also by saying it, that's also a part.
Okay, keep going. We're going more than that. Wanting to spend time with them, to understand them.
Mm-hmm. No.
You hear? That's much deeper. A gift can almost be okay,
Sent.
fine. Sorry?
It can be sent.
It can be sent, it can be, and it has its time and place.
You're saying giving your own resources, so to speak.
No. Well, yes and no, more than that. If there is somebody that I'm genuinely in love with, fascinated by, curious, I want to spend time with them. I want to understand them.
Uh-huh.
When you learn Torah, you are saying, Hashem, I want to get to know you. I want to understand you. I'm curious about you. You fascinate me. How do you demonstrate that more than anything else? Learn his Torah. That's his mind. That's how you get to know. Do you hear that? You get to know, you get to be familiar with Hashem. There's only one way, and that is through his Torah. That's the only way he gives us of getting an insight, of getting into his mind, so to speak, because that's what the Torah is. Him and his Chochmah is one, as the Rambam says. And that's why Chazal at the root, what was so special about them was that they if you spend a huge amount of time familiarizing yourself with the thought patterns and the way that somebody's mind works, you get an insight into their mind. And that's why Chazals, when they say something, it's much more meaningful than when you or I say it, because they have aligned their whole will and their whole desire. It's not just a cold clinical thing, I'm going to sit and learn Torah because I enjoy it. It is fundamentally an aspect, a way of getting close to Hashem. It's Ahavas Hashem. And then you get to know their mind.
Sometimes it seems like the partner knows the person better than the person.
So it can be. In this case, obviously, it's not going to work because it's Hashem.
Okay,
it's infinite. But
right.
he's given us, and that is the aspect which I think is not often appreciated. Let's have a look. Let's see this. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad V'ahavtos Hashem Elokecha B'chol levav v'chol nafsho v'chol meidecha. What's the next words? You love Hashem, it becomes an outgrowth, it becomes a consequence. You love Hashem with all your thing, then you will spend time trying to hear what he's got to say. Who is he? What does he want? How does he think? And I will therefore, because I love my kids, I love Hashem, and therefore, when I learn something from him, I want to pass that on because it's the best thing since sliced bread. That's why I do it. Goes back, by the way, to what we've always said, that the reason that you do it is the human, as in the love, not, I am the keeper of some truth and I will share it with you, my subject. You understand? It's not, it's the exact opposite. And you see it here in the flow of the psukim. It's really important. La'ahava is another pasuk in Devarim. La'avas Hashem Elokecha. How do we do that? Says the Sifri 13, beautiful Sifri, and not a lot of people know this enough. Rebbe Omer Lomo Nemar Lefi Shenemar V'ahavtos Hashem Elokecha B'chol levavcha Eini Yodea Ketzad Oya V'mes Hamokim Talmud Loimar Oyu Advarim Eila Shanechim Tzamchim Alavecha Tein hadvarim ha'ela al libecha shemitoich kach ato makir es misha omar v'hoya ha'olam. That's how you get to be makir the Rabbinerseminar, to know who and to understand him. Who is he? Through his Torah, he shares with you his thought. That's how you are la'ahavoy sen l'dov kaboy. Beautiful. That's a sifri. This is Rebbe. Rebbe Omer is teaching us. That's how you get to know Hashem. Chazal understood Talmud Torah is one of the central ways in which we are able to fulfill the mitzvah of loving Hashem. So he's a Sefer Mitzvos l'Rambam, V'loshen Sifri. He brings this. The Rambam brings this Sifri in Sefer HaMitzvos on the mitzvah of loving Hashem. And we say in davening, now you understand, in davening we say in the night, Ahavas Olam, Beis Yisrael Amcha Ohavta. How do I know? Because Torah mitzvah chukim v'mishpatim is only limadata. Because how do I know Hashem loves us? Because he gave us the greatest gift of all, which was the opportunity to peer into his mind, so to speak. Why did he give us Torah? Because he loves us. Al-Kain Hashem Elokeinu b'shachreinu v'kumeinu nosiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei seirasecha ki heim chayeinu v'erchameinu v'ahavoscha atosim imenu leilamim baruch atah Hashem v'yevam Yisrael. That's the perfect prelude for Shema. And by the way, it's not very different in the morning, whether you say Ahava Rabba, Ahava Solam, but it's the same concept. Ahava Rabba, Avtonu Hashem Elokeinu Ahava Rabba Chaim lo gedem sagen mal talenu, avinu akid ba Abraham saying Shabbat vat lamdim chukei chaim kin chalim. Avinu Abraham rachim saying living la havinu la haskel Ishmael lilmud love it. That is it. Now the reason that we only bring, this is my own fault, why we say simcha in the evening, we only bring in v'nismach is only in the evening. Because the evening is Torah Shabbal Peh, and that's the simcha. Because that is the bris element, and therefore there is simcha. But okay. Let's just finish this bit off. Yeah? Yeah? Says the Abu Dram, Kihim chayinu v'erichameinu, al shem kihu chayecha v'erich yomecha, v'hem nega yomam v'laylo, is v'hagisa b'yomam v'laylo. Mo'ahavti teirasecha kol hayom yisichasi. Omar Rabbi Yehuda says the Gemara in Brachos, Omar Rabbi Yehuda mashmuel hishkim l'shanais. If you woke up early and to learn Torah, ad shalei karash kriyash ma tzarich levarich. Before Kriya Shema, you have to make a bracha. Once you said Kriya Shema in tzarich levarich, shekvan nifta b'ahava rabbah. Ahava rabbah can also function as a birchas haTorah. Why? Because it is fundamentally a recognition of the beautiful and special gift that Torah is. That is the purpose of Ahava Rabbah, of birchas haTorah. Therefore, you could potentially use it, and that's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. Wow. So, all commentators agree that the mitzvah of Avos Hashem is incumbent on men and women equally. If women are able to connect with the mitzvah of Avos Hashem through learning Torah, it would be a Torah mitzvah and indeed obligation. So again, that's from the perspective of women learning Torah. Of course, there are many other ways we could do a mitzvah of, we could do, be mekayim the mitzvah of Avos Hashem as well. Let's have a look at the next bit quickly. Yiras Shamayim. Another consequence or perspective or purpose almost of Talmud Torah is to get Yiras Shamayim. Hakel, the mitzvah of Hakel. What does it say? 20. Hakel is v'anoshim v'taf. Geich Hashem Yishmerecha. They should come. Leman yishmu, leman yilmedu, v'yoru es Hashem alekeichem, v'shomru l'asais. The mitzvah of Hakel requires men and women to be there as well. Why? Says the Rashi, based on Chazal. Hanoshim, the men come lilmoid. The women lishmaya. Interesting. It doesn't say the women come lilmoid. But the women come lishmaya. And the kids come because to give schar to those who bring them. Says the Ramban, Leman yishmu, leman yilmedu, ha'anoshim v'hanoshim, ki gam hein shoymois, v'loimdois, le'yiro es Hashem. They also listen and learn to serve to fear Hashem. I don't actually agree with what he's written, the sentence he's written here. The Ramban understands men and women have an obligation to learn in order to increase their Yiras Shamayim. I actually do not agree. I think that's actually, he's misread the Ramban, personally. It's a good example, by the way. Look. Ki gam hein shoymois, comma, v'loimdois liyiras Hashem. That's how it should be read. He's actually misread the Ramban. The women also listen, and thus they learn liyiras Hashem. Because Rashi himself clearly said the Noshim come lishmaya, they don't come lilmoid. But the velomdu, the leman yilmedu v'yoru means that they should learn to fear Hashem. And that, of course, is incumbent on women as well. And we're going to leave the next one for tomorrow, which is where the fun starts. V'shinantam levanecha. And here we enter a slightly different realm, which is the understanding of to what extent is fundamentally the mitzvah of Talmud Torah based upon the mitzvah to teach it. And then we will start thinking halachically. There we're going to slow down and spend a bit more time to understand the women's obligation to learn and to teach. And we'll see where that goes. Okay.